Response video to Joe, the EconomicStability.org guy. He did a response video, and I appreciate that, so I will continue to attempt to engage him in a discussion. He doesn't like my hostility, but, what the hell. Can't do much about that. And so I'll get to his further argument, like he somehow thinks it's just a waste of energy or something, like I'm just angry for the fun of it. But there is a point. So first, let's get to the simple arguments. I didn't say money is wealth. I'm saying it's when it's functioning as it should, it's indistinguishable from stuff, from wealth, from things. You can't tell the difference. When money's working, you can't tell the difference between a piece of money and an actual stuff, actual valuable, useful product. Obviously, this piece of paper has no value. You can't eat it. You can't even polish your rear end with it. You can't do much with it. But it's a contract paper, all right? And when it's functioning right, it's stuff. It is stuff, all right? Because you can take it to the bank and get stuff, guaranteed, valuable stuff. And so they haven't just printed this stuff. This stuff was created because the federal government said, we will back, some stuff. So we'll make basically the federal government said to the banks, okay, here we're making a bank. We need some stuff in the bank so you can loan some money. All right, we'll put in our little stuff here. We'll slide in the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone Park. We got a ton of great stuff. And so we'll just give you a guarantee that, we're going to put this stuff in and it's going to be valuable stuff. And so if you bring your money back, you're going to get a piece of valuable stuff because we got really good stuff. And that's all they were doing. They're just guaranteeing the loans to start with. And once that whole starts, then people start putting their stuff in the bank to get this money stuff out. But that's the principle. The money just represents stuff. All right? And there's a lot of other paper out there that also represents stuff now. I mean, this isn't the only money in the world. A bond is money. It's another piece of paper that's pretty darn indistinguishable from stuff because you can take it to the bank and get stuff for it. And that's part of where the problem starts, but let's not even get into that. The point is that all this stuff, this currency stuff, this paper stuff, it isn't backed by nothing. It's backed by people who own stuff, who have title to things. And they put the title in the bank, all right, and they expect to make a profit when this money stuff is loaned out to people and they have to pay it back again. And they're making money beyond what it costs. So beyond the failure rates and beyond all that stuff, they're making this thing called interest. So that everybody had this expectation that their stuff grows in value. They buy a house and it grows in value. This is my surplus now. This is my investment property. It's not just my property. And I have an expectation that I'll make money on it. And that's the thing that destroyed the economy, because most of the stuff in existence now is considered by the true title holder as investment property. And that's the doom, because there's just been too much. We've put too high a price, too high a value on income derived from surplus over income derived from work. We've obviously decided to pay workers nothing overseas, exploit the hell out of them, give them no fair value for their labor, while in this country give people huge tax breaks on investment capital, on their dividends and their capital gains. We tax it at much less the rate we tax income from actual physical productive labor. That's just completely backwards. So over time, because of this policy we have of allowing people to have a birthright to these big giant piles of stuff that keep growing. The stuff keeps growing because it's investment capital. It's investment stuff. It's not just stuff you live on. It's not just stuff you live with or live through or eat. No, it's not consumable stuff. It's investment stuff. So it keeps growing and growing, and their piles of stuff have grown and grown. And the only way those piles grew is because they took the stuff from the workers. They took the stuff from everybody else who had any stuff. And they did it through basically inflating the commodity prices out of people's access. They could no longer buy stuff. They could only rent stuff. And we had to rent our consumption. That's what it comes down to. All this debt just represents people renting consumption because they couldn't afford consumption anymore. because they have there's no they have no labor to sell either, because the problem is you have all this stuff tied up, all this investment capital tied up, and it won't be released unless it can accrue a profit. So for every bit of it that's released, there is an interest payment that must be paid, and that interest can only be paid out of a productive worker's salary. So there's less and less incentive for a worker to work. He's not only competing with foreign labor, but he's competing with a tax, an interest tax, that obliges him to pay the owners a profit, an interest profit. And that's just doom. And so I don't know why we really should be able to agree on this stuff. I mean, the problem isn't the Federal Reserve. It doesn't manufacture money out of nowhere. The money has a trail. If you take this money to the bank, if everybody had a run on the bank, they could solve the problem. They could resolve what each dollar is worth, and everybody would get their share of what is the collateralized asset. And of course, now that the government has guaranteed stock market crap, absolute crap, the value of this money has diminished. It's been devalued because the government has bought a bunch of crap. Okay, they gave this stuff out and took complete crap as the stuff. So the stuff that some of this money represents has now really been decreased in value because it's not Yellowstone Park anymore. It's crappy junk stock market bullshit. And so that's a real problem. But you still, as a total of the economy, this is a tiny percentage. There's only $2 trillion of this money stuff in circulation. And up to a year ago, there's only $1 trillion. All right, but there's a ton of bonds. So you got 13 trillion of them. So it's another big pile of money. But all those bonds, they didn't just manufacture them. All right, they sold them. Okay, they received valuables, stuff, other bonds. They received other notes, other forms of transaction money, okay, for those issued bonds. And that's basically the collateral of them. So, yeah, it's debt. It's debt we owe. And it's not good that it was allowed to take place. But your alternative of saying, I love the idea of just printing the money. Yeah, if I had the two choices, borrow or print, I say, yeah, face the upfront inflation, face the immediate inflation, and print it rather than borrowing it. Yeah, borrowing is a disaster. Okay, that's just crazy. I mean, the federal government no way should do that. But it was the deficit spending was the problem in the first place, because if you would have printed the amount of money we borrowed, you still would have had huge inflation. And the problem would still exist, that the rich, the owners of the big piles of stuff would still invest money. I mean, they'd still have to have investment stuff. They wouldn't want stuff that didn't grow in value. So they'd still go out there and buy commodities. The commodities still would have gotten bought. I mean, if it wasn't bought through a debt contract, okay, with a consumer, they still would have done the consuming. They still would have bought the assets. So they still would have inflated their value. So the end game is still, it's inflation either way, because they're going to own everything. And that's where I get to the point of the futility of it, because then all the stuff is locked up. It's not available to produce, to incite productive work, to invest in productive work. It's only there to invest in the work the rich have declared useful to them. And the work, they're only going to find work useful to them that they can derive a good profit off of. So if they can't scam somebody or take, they're not going to pay you to steal somebody's money. That's going to be the greatest. That's what they really want you to do. They want to pay you to steal somebody else's money and give it to them. That's the kind of work you'll end up with. And that's why it's unemployment that's going to kill this economy, the rest of the way, as that creeps in. There's going to be just horrible hardship. All right, so that's the real point. Let's get to the real bottom line argument here. I mean, my argument to you is that you've misidentified the problem. Getting rid of the Federal Reserve won't fix the problem. And fractional reserve banking is not the problem either. There's no such thing as banking without it. Banks were invented originally because people couldn't keep the money in their wooden house, okay, because their wooden house could get broken into too easily. So they had banks because they had a safe place to put their money. well, we don't need that anymore. I mean, a rich man can buy his own vault. He can buy his own security and protect his stuff. But the reason why they use banks now is because they want the money to go out and make more money for them. They want their stuff to get bigger, and it can't get bigger if it's locked up in their vault. It can only get bigger if they go out and buy stuff with their money. Buy low, sell high. All right, that's the game. So that's why they use banks. But nobody's going to use a bank if there isn't fractional reserve banking, because there'd be no such thing as a loan as a practical matter. You'd have to find somebody to, I mean, you have to find the payment for the loan to put in the bank before you even had the, before you could make the loan. I mean, there's no way. You'd have to double collateralize every loan. Would have to be double collateralized. And the bankers were evil, but they didn't do anything wrong in theory unless